this is a list of business capabilities. Now, this isn't an in-depth software demo. I'm not going to go into all the details of how it works and everything, but happy to do that if anybody is interested in that at some other point. But here we have a list of business capabilities. And if I just pick one, let's have a look at strategy definition. That's a fairly well-defined one. Let's have a look at what a definition of a business capability means. So first of all, we've got business capabilities are hierarchical. They can sit within higher level capabilities or capability groups, people sometimes call them. So strategy definition is part of business management. And if I look at that in a tree form over here, you'll see that we are in the core capabilities, within which we have business management, within which we have a number of capabilities, one of which is strategy definition. We'll look at that in a graphical form in a minute because it's easier and just nicer to work with. This is just the sort of nuts and bolts underneath it. So our capability, the various other things you can put on it for display, always needs to have a description or a definition. Generally speaking, it should be the ability to do something. What we find is often an issue with organizations who are starting into business architecture is they will have business capabilities and value streams and processes and organization units that all have the same name. And writing out a definition which starts the ability to do something will just help you to validate whether it really is a business capability that you're looking at. Is it what you do? Is it how you do it? This is a description of what you do. So lots of details on here. We're not going to go into all of that today, but it is important to see business capabilities clearly can't exist in isolation. Business capabilities are linked to other things. This is where we start seeing this idea of the connected enterprise that is business architecture, that sits underneath everything, and it's so important to understand. This business capability, strategy definition, there it is in the middle, is connected to a number of other things. It appears in an assessment template, and we're going to talk about those a little later. It may be supported by technology capabilities. It's unlikely it would have anything to do with directly specific technologies, but at the highest level, just as you have business capabilities in business architecture, you have technology capabilities in technical or enterprise architecture, and that's something we'll talk about on another session. It's connected to stakeholders, initiatives. That's something that will start to resonate with more of the audience. That's where we start looking at the projects and the programs of change that can affect this business capability. And it's related to organization units. It's related to various different things. So, for example, this business capability, strategy definition, is related to these business units. So capital market operations, private wealth management, business banking, and commercial and business banking are all organizational units within this fictitious bank client that leverage this business capability. Now, if I were to open up applications, so we're straying across into the technology and the application architecture world now, in here we can see strategy definition is supported by all of these applications, and that's important. We're going to come back to that a little bit later when we look at how you can use business architecture to start doing things like portfolio rationalization and APM and things like that. But that's a teaser for something that's coming a little bit later. Now, we're still looking at the world from strategy definition, and we can see there's these 18 applications. Is it 18? No, 16. My eyesight's getting bad. 16 applications that support it. If I look at one of those with just a little click on the I button here, it brings up more information about this thing, Actimize, which is an application. And in here, we can see that supports these 5 information concepts. So now we've seen information concepts and business capabilities. If I look at one of these information concepts, client, for example, click on that, everything pivots round. Now we're looking at the world from the point of view of that information object. So it's called client. Somebody, whoever built this test data set, has failed to put a definition in here. So this is incomplete architecture. There should be a textual definition of it. So we'll hide that quickly so they don't get in trouble. Taxonomically, we can see a client is it's a type of party. A borrower may be a type of client. It's also synonymous with agency, but you shouldn't confuse it with contact or third party. So you've got a taxonomical view around an information object. So this gives us an information concept. This is setting the information concept as a valuable part of the business architecture. Again, down here, you can see what is this information object related to? Some applications, org units, stakeholders, regulations, all sorts of things. So Again, the connected enterprise is key here, and it's coming through again and again and again in what we're looking at. All of this stuff is related. It is all adding value, and we'll look at some of that value in a second. So, all right, so if I were to just one more stage of jumping around, which organization units are related to this information object? I could have done it from over here, that's even quicker. Which organization units are related to this information object? There's one called consumer. So let's go and have a look at that. If I go into the consumer, so now we've gone to the third of those pillars. We've looked at business capabilities, what do you do? We've looked at information concepts, what is important to the business. We've looked at refresh my browser because of course it's going to go slowly while I'm doing a live webinar. Sorry about that, talk amongst yourselves for a minute. There we go, thank you. So now we're looking at this business unit, and this business unit called consumer is related to the information concept we were looking at just now and some applications that support it. Just to close that loop a little bit, if I want to also relate it to a business capability, we go into here and we will have a look at, let's pick one that's not associated. Customer insight, for example, likely they would use consumer information. I will drag that over here and I will drop it in here. What that's done is it has now created an association between the business capability and customer insight. I can go the other way around and go to that business capability and see everything else that's associated with it. So again, we're just joining these dots. That's an important phrase about business architecture. We're joining the dots all the time. It's all part of the connected enterprise. Okay, where should we go next? We've looked at the what, we've looked at the what's important, and we've looked at the who. We have not yet looked at the how. So let's have a look at a value stream. Where do we want to be? We're in, let's go into this business capability, customer insight. Now we can see all the places this business capability is used. This model that we saw already shows you all the things it's related to. We can also see where is it used. Actually, no, we don't want to go into a value stream just yet. Let's have a look at an organizational model first, because I missed that one out, I apologize. So if I go, just click on that, I can see an org model. Now, a little bit small to see there, so I'll just bounce it out to a full screen. And there you go, that's an example of a typical organizational model. So this is showing how the business units and the collaborative teams and the third-party external organization unit, how they're all related together. It's just, this is just a high-level model. It's not an org chart. It's not saying I report to my boss and my boss reports to her boss, and et cetera, et cetera. It's about how the organization joins together. And the reason that's important for a business architecture view is you can then do what's called a cross map. If you see, if I zoom this in a little here, we've got business capabilities that are associated with these. Now, there's a lot more associated data, as we saw before. Clicking the I button, you can see all of it. I'm just surfacing a bit that's important for a presentation here. So I can create this view using the current data, click a button, create a PNG from this, drop it into a PowerPoint deck and go and show it to my boss to show which business capabilities are important to the commercial banking sales organization, for example. All right, the one we haven't talked about, and I said just now I would, and I'm sorry I didn't, is value streams. So let's pull up a value stream, show you what one of those looks like. And this is the area of business architecture that often resonates best with people because it describes something pretty familiar. It describes how people do things. Everybody has an opinion on how people do things. So for example, here's one called anti-money laundering, which is a very specific thing that is important to any bank of any size, AML. So that took a couple of seconds to open because this is all generated from data. We don't have to lay this one out. This is what a typical value stream looks like. I'll zoom into it a bit so we can see it more easily. So at the top, you have just a generic description, who are the triggering stakeholders, and all these things can just be dropped on the map. The value proposition, what's the point of doing this? What does the organization get? What value do they get out of delivering this value stream? Well, the value of delivering anti-money laundering is you are in regulatory compliance. You probably also don't get chased by gangsters and various other things, but at this level, the important thing is regulatory compliance. That's the overall value proposition. There are some stages you go through to do this, and you see there the way they're laid out, simple, left to right, like a process flow, but without any decision points in it or any details like that. Items, now these are the individual bits of value that are created by each of these stages. So the result of establishing beneficial ownership is you have a certified beneficial ownership form. That's something of value, because if there's an audit in future, you can go and pull that form and say, here it is, important thing. So that's what the items are about. Close that up. The entrance and exit criteria are all about the conditions that must exist before this stage can start. That's the entrance, we'll get rid of them, and the conditions that will exist once this stage has finished. So again, we can just move on from those things. Stakeholders, who's involved in each of these stages? So this is where we're starting to cross into another dimension of business architecture, which is our catalogue of stakeholders. Now, these can be humans or they can be roles. In this case, we happen to have roles showing, but we can manage either of them equally well. It's obviously at a high level value stream, it makes more sense to use roles. In the more detailed process models and that sort of thing, you may want to have named individuals, you may want to still have roles. I mean, if you're talking about who is the steward for a business capability, for example, it normally makes more sense to have a human name on there, so it's somebody that's physically accountable for it, but that sort of thing. Anyway. All right, so yeah, that's the stakeholders. Finally, cross-map. This is where we're sort of pulling it all together. So for this stage, establish beneficial ownership of this value stream, anti-money laundering, we are going to be leveraging the action item definition business capability. And we're going to be using an application called Medallia. At this stage, we're going to be consuming or creating client information and using a couple of applications, etc., etc., etc. And then over here, this thing that says PR, that is a detailed business process, which as a result of reporting the AML compliance and saying everything's good, you can then optionally physically move on to open an account. This is just test data, don't read anything into the details of it, I'm just showing how it all fits together. So you could then drill from that into the business process. Any of these things you could click, so you could say, okay, there's an application there called Medallia. Let me have a look, get more information about that. It appears as on 2 value stages, we can see them there. There's a version of it out there, it uses a microservice, it's supplied by 2 vendors. It supports a couple of different business processes further down, not at this level, which is why the link's not shown, but further down it does. And it applies to 4 business capabilities, one of which is relevant in the context of this value stage. Okay, one more thing I want to do in here, demoing, just to sort of bring it all together, and then we'll go back to having a look at a bit more of the sort of fundamental definitions underneath business architecture. So what we're going to do is create a visual business capability model, or a business capability map. Now, I said before, when we're looking at the data up here, it's all hierarchical. It exists here in this fairly easy to consume, but long. I mean, you get lists of 500, 600, 700, 1,000 of these in some organizations. So this is not really a way to consume them for any useful purpose, unless you're editing the things. Most people will want to see this as a nice, friendly picture. So what we will do is have the system build a nice, friendly picture for us. So if I look at my business capability maps, I'll say I want to create a brand new one. This has not existed until this moment, and we will call it 360 demo map. Save and model that, and we get a blank piece of paper. There you go, brilliant. What we can do with a blank piece of paper, though, is we can say, I want to see all the capabilities that make up my core. So and core typically is capabilities that are not necessarily unique to your business, but capabilities that describe your business, whereas strategy and governance are common capabilities to pretty much all businesses. It's just how you run your business rather than what your business does. And supporting is the other stuff that sits underneath the shared services, like HR, like legal, that sort of thing. So again, it's core where you can make the most differentiation. So I've dragged this across. I've not let it go yet because I've been talking. When I let it go, that plus will disappear. So now system is going to say, how deep do you want to go? Do you want to go just a couple of levels down, or do you want everything that's there? We'll take everything that's there. System will now lay that all out for us and draw a picture of boxes inside boxes. Whoop, slightly faster than drawing lots of boxes and lining them up in Visio, but that's not the point. The point is there's data behind this. This is a connected enterprise model we've just created live. So if I save that model, and the system tells me it's saved, and then we go into view mode, now we can start seeing what is underneath this. So if I start looking at some of these business capabilities, that strategy definition, for example, I button, all this data is connected underneath it. One of the things this says, and I talked at the beginning about using business architecture to give a context to portfolio rationalization, for example. Am I spending too much money on my applications? Do I have too many of them? Do I have overlapping technologies? All that sort of thing. That whole exercise, which is one that's near and dear to so many companies at the moment, can be framed by business architecture to give it more relevance and context. So I can look at each of these business capabilities. If I look at the first one, how many applications support that? There's 12 of them. What are they? All that lot. Look at the second one. You see where this is going. There's 4 support that, blah, blah, blah. If there were 700 capabilities on this map, I really would not want to click on the button on each one. Neither will I want to see a report that has those numbers in on each one. I want something much more dynamic and interactive that shows me an up to the second view of my connected enterprise. Do that through a heat map. So if I click the heat map button there, I want a count heat map, which is a simple one. We could also do advanced heat maps. We can do it based on values. We can do all sorts of things. You can combine criteria, but we're going to do a simple one. And these business capabilities on here, the system knows they can be associated to lots of different things. So I've got a big list here of all the things I could heat map against. I just care about applications for this for right now. And what I want to do is light up in green those business capabilities that are lean and mean, that don't have very many applications supporting them, because there's low functional redundancy there. We're saying we have a well-defined view of which applications will deliver this capability to my business. And then going down the colors, getting worse and worse until we see the ones that have got a barrage of different applications trying to do the same thing. So I'm going to say if there's 1 or 2, that's cool. I like that. 3 or 4, that can be yellow, not quite so good. Between 5 and 8, we'll make that the sort of salmony pinky color. And more than 8, I'm really not happy with it. You could add more criteria, you can change the colors, you can do whatever you want to do. And I'll say I want to cover the whole thing because I really want to see the message. Click the button, system goes off, works those out, brings them back, and now you've got a live dynamic heat map. There's one here called newly added capability, which is what I get for using demo data, isn't it? So somebody's added one that isn't associated with anything, that's fine, doesn't matter. But if I now click through these, I can see these green ones, they're the ones that are lean and mean, they're running well, don't need to worry about those from a functional redundancy point of view. There may be other things we're interested in, but functional redundancy, we're golden. The yellow ones, few more, these are the ones a little bit more of a problem. These fellas are the ones that we really should be caring about. So criteria 4 is there are more than 8 applications, and the system tells us there are 6 of those. So if I look in one of these, I'll see there's 12 there. That immediately says not a great picture. If there are 12 different applications that all say they are doing this same business capability. Now, you may say, and you'll be quite right, hang on, those applications may do 100 other things. So we can see that view as well. We can see what is the functional spread, or sorry, the strategic spread of those applications. All this is showing us now is functional redundancy. It's saying there are 12 there are 13 there are 16 there are 9 there. And whenever we go into these lists, we'll see what these 9 or 12 or 15 are. So this name Actimize seems to be coming up quite a lot. What I can do is go back to my heat map and I can say, draw me a dynamic heat map. I want to clear what's on there now because I want new information. The criteria still stand, but I want to do a dynamic heat map from the point of view of Actimize. So I can go there, I click on that. It will now redraw my heat map using the same colors, but it's only interested in the capabilities where Actimize plays a role. So this is now giving you a business architecture defined view of my strategic fit of this application. And it's business architecture defined because it's showing how this relates to the capabilities. We could be doing this with any sort of model. This could be an information map that shows the information concepts, and we're seeing which are the ones that have the most rules associated with them. Doesn't mean the rules are going to be right, it just means somebody's thought about associating rules with them. We could be looking at a process landscape and say, how many, light up in red all of those processes that do not have a current stakeholder in the process governance rule. And so so you can do the heat maps whichever way around you want. They can show whatever measure you want, and they can be based on whatever model you want. You can heat map a process model and light up in red all the steps that are manual. You can heat map and a inventory of your initiatives or projects and light up in red all of those that are claiming to be introducing a technology that your architecture models say should be demising. So again, it's all about that connected architecture. It's all about pulling it all together, the connected enterprise. That's the story behind all of it.